Well, good evening, everyone. I'm John, as you can tell by the fact that it says that on the bottom of the screen. This is the September 2021 edition of the AWS User Group UK. I actually don't think I'm up to date with the series number. This is 40 something, I think. I don't even remember how many of these I've done online since we started doing that. But we are, in fact, still online, and we will probably intend to be so until maybe spring next year. We are talking in the organising group about how we might take this back into the real world again next year, possibly with a bang and a nice big celebration, some big name speakers. Watch this space for those details. So if you're in the chat room, say hello, let us know where you are from, let us know, if you're from outside of the country, let us know if you are watching this from some kind of device that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be watching this on. Maybe you're sat on the toilet. Maybe don't tell us if that is the case. I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that have happened since the last AWS User Group UK meetup, which was back in July. One of the big pieces of Amazon-related news, I suppose, is that Bezos has been to space. That's right. Our esteemed leader Jeff blasted off into space with his brother and some other rich folk for the most part. And you paid for it. I paid for it. I helped him pay for it. Lucky us. Thanks for calling that out, Jeff, in your press conference at the end of that session. But space is exciting, in spite of the fact that billionaires burning fossil fuels to get off the planet is probably not the best use of resources, unless they're going to stay there, of course. But the child inside me is like, yay, space. So I'm kind of enjoying watching that. Incidentally, there's another space launch this evening, actually probably about 1 o'clock in the morning UK time, the Inspiration 4 launch, which is the SpaceX launch with the civilian passengers or civilian astronauts. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Anyway, we're getting way off topic. Things that have happened since the last user group. Launches of Health Lake. Health Lake is now generally available. EBS IO2 Block Express has become generally available. That's a type of IO2 volume that offers 4 times higher throughput, IOPS and capacity than those regular volumes. Also allows multiple attachment and elastic resizing. Kind of feels a bit like a SAN. We've got some more storage news for you later on, of course. This evening, there is now an AMI for Red Hat Enterprise Linux with Microsoft SQL Server for EC2. For those of you running SQL Server on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, now I asked this on Twitter, and a load of people said, "Oh yeah, that's most of SQL Server workloads these days running on Linux." Calling me surprised. We also have now support for Kubernetes 1.21 in EKS. We've got cross-region automated backups for RDS available in more regions now. And if you're drinking the quantum Kool-Aid or the blockchain Kool-Aid, QLDB now supports KMS keys, so now you can encrypt your magic wang numbers. EC2 now offers M6i instances. These are 6th generation Nitro instances with Intel Ice Lake processors, which offer things like memory encryption. These are good general purpose instances for your applications. And Amazon Memory DB for Redis, one of the more sort of interesting releases of late. That's a multi-availability zone durable Redis cluster with extremely high performance that you might want to use if you want to use Redis as a system of record rather than as a cache, as you might do with Elasticache. Speaking of which, you can also now auto scale your Elasticache Redis instances, which is surprising it's taken this long to arrive, I guess. And also AWS Backup Audit Manager is now available to report on compliance against your data protection policies, which all sounds a bit boring, but very, very useful to you if you're in that kind of compliance space, as many of our clients tend to be. And there's loads more. These were just the things that stood out to me as I scrolled back through the what's new blog posts and to have a look at what's been going on. Obviously, the other thing that's been released recently is Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. We've got a couple of folks from both NetApp and AWS talking this evening about that product offering. offering. One of them, in fact, also told me today that I'd missed this. If you are a Deliveroo user and also an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can now use your Amazon Prime membership to get, I believe, a free year of whatever the Deliveroo equivalent of Amazon Prime is. I'm not sure what they're calling that. I think Kirk was going to share the link to that in the chat if he had that to hand. So back to the chat. As I mentioned, we've got pipeline burst from Reading. Zero hair, I guess is how you'd pronounce that, from Hertfordshire. Washing dishes. Wow, you've already had dinner. That's a little early, possibly. Yeah, actually, nobody has else has said where they're from. Anybody else want to own up from where they're based? Yes, of course. The other thing that's gone on since we were last here on the stream is we have two, in fact, Ask Me Anythings. We've had well-known cloud economist and platypus botherer Corey Quinn, who was here on our Discord server, being his usual self, as you might imagine Corey to be, and also Bridget Johnson, the Queen of IAM, answering many questions about IAM and security policies, but steadfastly refusing to answer my question about how IAM has evolved constantly over the years and getting better and better. So what's Cognito's excuse? Turns out that I can't get anyone from Amazon to answer what the hell is going on with Cognito. If any of you know, you can contact me. You can find me. Those are my details. I'd love to know what's happening with Cognito because it really hasn't gone anywhere for a very long time. We have Afro Toaster joining us from Amsterdam. Great stuff, Afro Toaster. That's the of course Mark Nunnikoven there, Mark CNA, joining us from Ottawa in Canada, maybe the furthest afield today. Burrito Blah says, I'll admit where I am if you say what kind of earphones you're wearing. Yeah, these are Aftershocks. Aftershocks open move. I think not open reach. Those are the connectivity people. But they are bone conducting headphones, and I opted for these because I was used to previously be using these closed back devices here, but I was finding when I was on calls all day, because that's what I do now, rather than tech things, I just talk to people and do spreadsheets. Then I was over pronouncing the things I was saying. I was speaking too loudly, and so these allow me to hear myself a little easier, and so I'm not yelling into the microphone and ruining my throat, which is basically what I did in the first 3 months of lockdown. I should, I suppose, Burrito Blah, be sharing things like affiliate links and getting a bit of money for your buying of these headphones, which you're undoubtedly about to do. But well, I'll think of that or set that up next time, I imagine. And you're in London, great, good to see a fellow Londoner. I personally am in Woolwich, southeast, although currently thinking of moving north again. I'm a northerner by birth and by raising. Currently looking at a move away from the big smoke in future. Not quite as close to York as Edwin. I don't know why I even try and pronounce these. As the person in red on my screen right now has just said that they're from York, probably Leeds or the Leeds general area. Anyway, you don't need to know about my my plans to move out of London. Things that sorry, I'm looking over here because my other screen has stuff on it. We're at 32 viewers in the feed today. Hello from Bournemouth. Is that the Andrew I know from Bournemouth, who a colleague of mine? Let's go for this. I've already asked where you are, and I've also talked already about since we were last here. So good effort here. We have had two AMAs since the last stream. As I mentioned, we had Corey and we've had Bridges. We'd love to know if there are other people that you would like to get an AMA with on Discord. Anybody sort of around the AWS ecosystem, whether that's community heroes or ambassadors or people from product teams or other faces that you've seen. We'd really like to know who you'd love to question, because we'd like to stack up a few more of those for the future. So if you have any great ideas about who we should be doing AMAs with, I mean, write them in the chat now if you like. I know Paul is online paying steadfast attention to the feed. If you think of somebody and you don't want to put it in the chat here, or you think later, drop it in Discord, drop us a message, find us on our meetup page, all that kind of stuff. We would really love to get your ideas on who we should be grilling. Thus far, we've had Jeff Barr, chief evangelist and very prolific blogger from AWS, guy with the purple hair that you might have seen wandering in the halls of reInvent. We've also had Yen Trey, who is one of the community heroes around serverless. You may have seen his Lambda courses or his AppSync courses. And as I said, we had Corey and we've had Bridget. But any other ideas you have, we'd love to hear those. Moving on from that topic, my clicker's not working very well today. I don't know what's going on. We obviously have a Discord that you can join. I think Paul's already shared the server details there. That's there running between the streams. So if you want to jump on and chat after we're done, or your sort of burning question, or you want to post a job that's available in your organization and so forth, do please jump on there and continue the conversation between times. It's a little quiet between streams at the moment, but a little bit of chat going on. We'd love to see a little bit more of that. We also are on LinkedIn, as we, most people are, and we're also on Twitter. Paul has shared all of the details of that in the chat as well. Hello, Cloud Security Guy from Epping. Good to see you on the feed. We are the user group really interested in supporting diversity and inclusivity in the industry. It is a massive problem. I'm standing here as a I guess approaching middle-aged white dude talking to you. There are a lot of white dudes in tech. We've tried to represent other groups of people, other demographics on the stream, on the meetup group, and we also would love to hear from you as a community about how you identify and where you're from, what your ethnicity is, and so forth. Partly to get an understanding of how our community is evolving over time. We've set ourselves some goals the year before last, or last year. Time's difficult, isn't it? We've set ourselves some goals about increasing our reach as a community and becoming a bit more diverse as a group. And the survey is a way of finding out whether we are meeting those goals. We're also asking some questions in this survey about things like any disabilities you might have, so that we can, when we go back in person to meetups, we can support you either through accessibility support or things like closed captioning and so forth. So any of those sort of needs that you have as a community member, we'd love to hear what those are so that we can better support you in the future. If you fill out the survey, there's an opportunity for you to win one of 10 Echo Dots. You don't need to leave your personal details in the survey alongside all of your other details that we're asking for in that survey. You'll get a link at the end, and it will take you to a different place to sign up and say, I've completed the survey, I'd like to enter the competition to win an Echo Dot. So do please go and fill that out. We'll be sharing the link a bit more frequently through Meetup and email, so that you're reminded to go and do that. But we'd love to see you fill that stuff in for us. Great. Moving on. Other surveys that go on. We post a survey every time we do a Meetup group, and that information that you give us helps us figure out what we could do better, things that you think we're doing well on, any ideas that you have for improving stuff. So do today fill out the survey. I'll be sharing this QR code and the link at the end again. And please do that. It's very useful. Apologies to whoever it is who on I think the last 2 or 3 has filled out saying Twitch is awful, please don't use Twitch. Sorry about that. It is not a good look for us as an AWS user group to be using a Google product for streaming, such as we might on YouTube. But also the chat features on Twitch are much better. So we will be sticking with Twitch, I'm afraid. And so Now it's time to thank our sponsors, or at least hear messages from our sponsors. We'll thank them later on. Our first sponsor this evening is Deloitte. Here is someone from Deloitte telling you all about them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AWS UK user group. It's great to see all of you joining virtually. Today, I'm joining you from our Deloitte office. And I know that not everyone can or should be back in the office, and that's okay. It's fantastic that we have technologies just like these to help us keep connected. A little about myself. My name is Victor Wingsing, and I am a manager here at Deloitte Cloud Engineering Group, where I work at the digital workplace team. So what do? We advise our clients on their digital workplace journey, and we also help them to build, migrate, and modernize their business by harnessing the power of cloud technology. I joined Deloitte about 2 years ago, and like most people, I knew Deloitte as a auditor and management consultancy. That quickly changed because I learned that Deloitte is actually fundamentally a technology company with over 3,000 cloud and infrastructure practitioners, myself included. One of the most exciting things for me is to be part of this journey to grow our cloud transformation focus and bring to market a number of propositions that can help our clients on what cloud can enable. Last year, we all know, has been incredibly challenging for businesses, but now that things are picking up, we are seeing more and more organizations accelerate their cloud strategy. And just like us here at Deloitte, we are hiring rapidly, making cloud-related skills even more necessary than ever. So I encourage you to sit back, enjoy the session, but also feel free to talk to us if there's anything that we can support you going forward. And we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you to Deloitte there. A couple of hellos that I missed on the feed. We've got someone from Bath, M Collective from Bath. Interesting name there. Is that named for the Puppet-owned product that we used to use? I did a couple of talks on that back in the day when Puppet was relevant. We also have MJ Turner from Godalming, I think that's how you pronounce it, right? Godalming, and Jonas from Paris. Welcome, Jonas. I imagine you're sat with a glass of red wine outside a cafe somewhere. That's my abiding memory of Paris. Great. Let's hear now from our next sponsor, Esynergy Solutions.
It's Ola Ladipo. I'm the resource manager at Esynergy Solutions. For those who do not know Esynergy, we are a cloud solutions consultancy based in London, Fenchurch Street. And we typically focus on three main areas, which are cloud adoption, cloud native development, and data engineering. And of course, any wonderful technology challenges our customers may have for us. Today, I would like to share with you what it means to be a part of Esynergy, especially joining our associate community. Being an associate at Esynergy is not just becoming a contractor for us, but it's actually a more well-defined journey, becoming more of an SME in cloud technology services. And of course, whilst experiencing tremendous growth with us, both in public and private sectors. One of the things I really love about my role as a resource manager is I get to reach out to our associates for really great projects in AWS and Azure and several other technology solutions, but also to get our associates to do more of the work that they really enjoy and really passionate about. And of course, that brings them lots of fulfillment, career development, and of course, improving their skills within their subject matter. Part of our brand at Esynergy is also to place our associates into smaller, well-defined and highly effective teams. And obviously those teams are wrapped up in an agile environment, allowing them to deliver really excellent value to our customers. I would like to encourage all technologists and cloud enthusiasts to participate in our tech talks and upcoming events. To find out more about Esynergy and the great work that we do, please look out for our posts on LinkedIn and our social media platforms, and also our website as well. Thank you for listening. I hope to hear from you soon. Again, my name is Ola Ladipo and I'm the resource manager, and I'll catch you on our next event. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Esynergy. These are sponsors who, of course, if we were meeting in person, would be responsible for paying for the cold pizza and the warm beer that you would inevitably have. That looks awful, doesn't it? I ordered Domino's yesterday, and there's 2 slices left over. Pretty shameful for someone who actually quite likes cooking decent food as a hobby. Hello, Alex Waddle from Scotland. Also, hello, Colin Bridge from sunny Warrington. Is that twinned with grey and shit Warrington that I know? You're sat with half of Mild. I tell you what, Mild is an underrated beer, isn't it? I do like a pint of Mild. And you're sharing a Cognito update. I'm going to check that out. Sounds good. And Jonas is on the Grimbergen and Galois. That's also pretty French. Good job, Jonas. Moving on, our next sponsor, we don't have a video from, but Sainsbury's Tech would be sponsoring this event this year. If we were in person, they would have provided us with their conference room, it's a theatre, I suppose, their conference theatre to present from. But obviously, while we are not in person, we haven't been able to take advantage of their generosity this year. So also because I'm in charge of the buttons and no one can stop me, I'm going to promote the fact that I'm hiring. At the Scale Factory, we hire for AWS consultants at the Solutions Architect associate or pro level. We are fully remote as an organization. We offer flexible hours. You can see the salary range there. We're also, as of this month, hiring outside of the UK and Ireland in a selection of European locations. So if you are not in the UK and interested in working for the Scale Factory, you can drop by our careers page and see which of those locations we can also hire in, and see if that is applicable to you. I spent a lot of time rewriting the section of the website recently, so go have a look anyway. It's in my view, it's a very good example of how to advertise your jobs on the internet, but that is, of course, my opinion. Your opinion may differ. Right. Other things, other than me pushing my own company's agenda, we have a prize draw, as we always do at the on the meetup, and the prize draw is supported by the sponsors, of course. If you would like to enter the prize draw, then you can follow the link that Paul's just pasted into the Twitch chat, or you can use the QR code that's on your screen right now. We are giving away Echo Dots. Please do bear in mind that we cannot send these outside of the UK. So if you are entering from one of our remote locations, including Canada and Paris, unfortunately you cannot enter that particular competition. It's 1 Echo and 2 Echo Dots that we're giving away today. But if you can't accept a delivery to a UK address should you win, then please don't enter, because you will be disappointed if you win and we can't send you your goodies. I think the only other thing before we get right into the reason you're all here, the talks from people other than me, I'm going to show you a brief video about an upcoming event that's going on in London in real life that you might recognise from previous incarnations. I'm going to hand over to Phil from Steamhouse to tell you a bit about that.
Hi, I'm Phil Horn. I'm one of the organisers of the AWS Community Summit, and I am delighted to announce that we are back with a live in-person event on the 6th and the 7th of October at Excel in London. We've got loads of great sessions happening across the 2 days there on topics all to do with AWS, on topics like containers, serverless, machine learning and ML ops, automation, security, migrations, loads of sessions. Now these talks and panel sessions are going to be delivered by people that I expect you're already aware of, AWS community heroes like Liz Rice, Ben Ellaby and Sheen Breisels, covering containers and serverless. And then we've also got a whole bunch of ComSum AWS Community Summit regulars like Phil Basford, Steve Giguera, Matt Johnson, and loads more that you can basically go to our website to check out the full agenda and the speaker lineup. Now, in addition to those talks and panel sessions, we've also very pleased to announce that we've got a full Deep Racer League happening. So we've got the full-size track, 34 foot by 27 foot. All of this is being run and organised by Dave Smith from AWS. And there'll be the AWS pit crew there on the day helping you go and race your Deep Racer models. Now, obviously, most people have not done this before, but at this event, there's going to be the opportunity for you to join workshops to learn how to use Deep Racer, to learn how to code those models, etc., and then try them out on real Deep Racer cars and then race them on the track. There'll be a league running across those 2 days, and there are prizes for the podium placed competitors. So yeah, if you've ever wanted to have a go at Deep Racer or to learn more about machine learning, this is absolutely the right place for you to start. And you can go and sign up for those workshops on the website. I think the link is just coming up below. So all of this is possible only because we're doing it as part of a bigger show, bigger event called the Digital Transformation Expo. So enormous thanks to those guys for this. This means that we can put it on for free. We've got fantastic facilities and they are looking after the whole sort of COVID safe approaches to getting people back together at a large in-person event. So all of that's brilliant. In addition, they've also got some pretty cool speakers on the other stages. So there's Louis Theroux, who's doing one of the keynotes. There is also Adam Steltzner, who is chief engineer at NASA, also doing a keynote. And then some pretty headline speakers from AWS speaking as part of that DTX agenda as well. Darren Hardman, who's the VP for AWS in the UK and Ireland, and Ian Massingham, who many of you will know as ex-lead evangelist and now leads that startups team. So before I forget, also in the evening there'll be so after the sessions are finished on the 6th of October, we're going to be having a networking drinks session. We've got arcade machines in there. Anybody that's come to a previous ComSum in person will know that we always bring arcade machines down. We've got swag to hand out, which will be t-shirts and stickers. There's a load of Deep Racer hoodies and swag as well, I believe. So loads, an incredible amount of stuff that we're packing into 2 days. You can find out more, you can register all on our website, comsum.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter and or LinkedIn so that you get to see the announcements as they come out over the next couple of weeks. And that was a very rushed, very quick overview summary of everything that we are packing into those 2 days. Very much hope you can join us there.
So I guess Excel is no longer a Nightingale Hospital and COVID vaccination centre. Louis Theroux speaking at a digital transformation conference. That isn't exactly the fit that I would have imagined for that sort of event, but I guess these people do paid speaking gigs anywhere they can get paid. Right, so let's move on and have a look at the speakers for this evening. We've got Mark Nunnikoven, who's going to be first up, talking about how to build strong security guardrails in the AWS cloud with minimal effort, which is exactly the right amount of effort that I like to be involved in. Dennis Barton is actually, he's going to be our third speaker today, talking about creating a serverless architecture using Java and Quarkus. And we also have a talk from both Mark Toomey and Kirk Ryan, who initially told us they were going to talk about enterprise file storage on AWS, but in fact are going to talk about the new FSX for NetApp ONTAP that was released recently, and actually sounds way more interesting than maybe you necessarily think when you think of NetApp, which is a bit more sort of on-prem than you might be used to. So great stuff coming up. Without then further ado, I'm going to hit some buttons down here and we're going to hear from Mark Nunnikoven, who is he's a distinguished cloud strategist at Lacework, where he works with teams to modernize their security practices. He's also an AWS Community Hero, which is a bit like the AWS Ambassador program, but they get better swag than we do. So you should probably bow down to Mark and his hero cape. Off we go. Let's see what Mark has to say for us.
Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about how to build strong security guardrails in the AWS cloud with minimal effort. Now, let me ask you this. It's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I really do want you to think about this. What's the number one problem related to security in the cloud? Now, a lot of the time, people are going to say it's hackers, right? It's always in the basement with a hoodie and for some reason, fingerless gloves, typing in darkness, trying to hack into things. Now, I understand why you respond that way, but that's not the problem. Some people are going to say nation state, so far more organized, some big government conspiracy, maybe a military effort trying to hack into your stuff. Again, I totally understand why you'd say that, not the problem. Maybe you go with it's organized cyber criminals. Now this is far closer to reality. This is the vast majority of cybercrime is conducted by organized cyber criminals, but that's not the number one problem when it comes to security in the cloud. The number one problem when it comes to security in the cloud is actually just misconfigurations. That's right. It's taking a cloud service and not actually configuring it in the way that you intend or you expect. So you're going to see things that happen that you didn't think were possible, but they end up being a result of just one option being flipped the wrong way, or perhaps a parameter not sent with a specific API call. It's a misconfiguration. But really, those misconfigurations, when you cut it through all the noise, cut through all the hype reported around breaches, really, they're simply just mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. Given the dynamic environment in the cloud, given the pace at which things are moving, given the just sheer number of choices that we have for features and functionality in the AWS cloud, it's completely understandable that at some point you're going to make a mistake. The goal is to make sure that that mistake doesn't result in an unintended breach of customer data, or a privacy breach, or a security breach that causes some sort of large incident. That's what we want to avoid. But at the end of the day, the number one problem in security in the cloud is misconfigurations, which really just means mistakes. People are making mistakes, and that is causing some security problems. And the good news is we can tackle that. Understanding that, expecting what those are, now we can start to take steps to prevent these mistakes from happening, because it is under our control. Unlike hackers, unlike nation states, unlike cyber criminals, that's an external party. A mistake is something that we've done unintentionally to ourselves. So that gets us to the topic of guardrails. But before we get there, I want to just solidify on the goal of cybersecurity activities. There's a lot of complicated definitions out there, but I think this one is the simplest. It's truest to form, and it's going to keep you and your team on track. The goal of cybersecurity is simply to make sure that systems work as intended and only as intended. That covers stopping all of the bad stuff, but it also makes a focus on covering off these misconfigurations or mistakes and expanding that idea of security into where it should be in building robust and resilient systems. So keep that one in the back of your head, making sure that systems work as intended and only as intended. So let's talk a little bit about security controls. You're probably familiar with a bunch of them already, things like firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, anti-malware, application control. All of these things are different types of security controls, and they all have their use. Now, it's really best to sort them into two categories. There are detective controls, which is something that gives you the ability to say, I found this. Right? So it's just looking at data, it's looking at activity, and it's finding something and alerting you to that fact. The other category of security controls are preventative. I stopped this. So this is the difference between an intrusion prevention system and an intrusion detection system is a good example. An intrusion detection system is looking at the contents of a network communication packet, of a TCP/IP packet or UDP packet or whatever the case may be, and it's looking at that and it's looking for malformations, it's looking at known attack structures, things like that. And if it finds something, an intrusion detection system raises its hand and says, I found this. An intrusion prevention system, on the other hand, does the exact same thing, except when it finds something, it throws the packet out. It drops the network communication. So it prevents it. I stopped this from happening. Detective controls, preventative controls. Both have their place because obviously with a preventative control, when it's taking action, there's more risk that it could disrupt your business activities, and you may or may not be okay with that level of risk. But regardless of the type of control, here's basically how they work. Something is happening, and it could be something malicious. It's something enough to trigger a security control, and then it needs to make a decision. You need to have the security control making a call one way or the other. And what will normally happen is that there are three possible answers. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute, there's three possible answers. Most of the time, we see security controls through the lens of two answers. Yeah, well, there's three. There's yes, there's maybe, and there's no. Okay, so yes, no, and a maybe. Now, the yes and the no are actually what we're all very familiar with, what we're all very comfortable with, and the easiest to set up. They're allow or deny controls. I saw this, I was fine with it. I saw this, I freaked out, and I stopped it, right? So in allow and deny decisions, we have a bunch of services from the AWS cloud that will help us implement these types of security controls, not to mention third-party open source or APN partner controls as well. So things like AWS IAM, the Identity and Access Management System. This entire system is set around granting permissions. It's default deny to everything, and then you can allow based on certain criteria. So you can allow Mark to read that object in a S3 bucket. You can allow Mark to launch EC2 instances, things like that. So allow and deny, AWS IAM is probably the go-to, and it is the foundational security control within the entire AWS cloud. But there's a bunch of others as well. There's things like the AWS Network Firewall. There's AWS WAF, or the Web Application Firewall, as well as AWS Shield. Now, AWS Shield is the one that everybody forgets about because it's on by default and you never ever have to deal with it. It's just a service that AWS runs that they branded because they do sell Shield Advanced, which is they will help you in the midst of a distributed denial of service attack. They actually have incident responders there to help you. But all these controls are allow or deny. They're yes or no. And what we're talking about today is the maybes, because the maybes are where guardrails come into play. And I think this is really, really fascinating because as much as we want to go to the yes or no, maybe is far more interesting, simply because there are scenarios where I want you to have this ability, but I want you to apply some judgment in using it. So am I going to allow you to read or write to this S3 bucket? Can be a yes or no answer, but will I allow you to make buckets public? Potentially, it really depends, maybe. So there's some accounts where I'll turn on block all and you won't have that choice. I will say, no, you can't do that. However, in other scenarios, I want you to apply judgment and I want you to answer that sometimes is basically the answer. And guardrails are going to help lead you into a more secure decision by default when you, the builder, have been given the power. So that's where they fit into the scheme. We've got yes and no controls, which are sort of standard security controls. Guardrails are going to help us with those gray areas, the maybes. Okay, so let's walk through some examples because I find when we apply them, when we see this in real life, this makes way more sense to a lot of people. Okay, and our first example is going to be accessing an EC2 instance. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of having users access EC2 instances. So logging into these instances in production or even development, there are some challenges here, right? There's security issues that maybe you have a hard line and you just say, no, nobody can SSH or RDP into an EC2 instance. And that's probably a better security posture. But the vast majority of us are used to this. This is something that we're used to doing, and it's something that's normally allowed, but you don't want it to happen all the time. So you want to put a guardrail in place to help highlight this behavior and some of the challenges it poses to your security posture. So we look at this structure, we'll say we have a user. That user is logging in via SSH into that EC2 instance. And here we need some sort of guardrail so that this is just not a regular activity. It's Monday, I'm going to log in. Like, we want to get away from that. We want to put some pause into this flow so that the user starts to question, do I really need this access? Okay, and the way we're going to do that is by putting in a very simple structured guardrail. We're going to do it with a little bit of a serverless implementation, ironically because we're leveraging it off of a server. So once you log into your EC2 instance, we're going to have CloudWatch logs register that login. And that's on, you can enable that very, very simply in any AWS managed EC2 instance image. The CloudWatch logs agent is already there. You just need to turn it on and start sending those events back into the CloudWatch service. But what we want is that login event. So when I log in, when Mark logs into EC2 instance APC, we are going to create a log event based on that. Again, it's already pre-configured by default. And then that is going to send a CloudWatch event. Again, CloudWatch, Fantastic service, love it to death, but it's actually 3 services. There's metrics, events, and logs, but they're all lumped under the same thing. It is what it is, you just have to deal with it. So we're using logs on an agent on the instance to send that occurrence of me logging into the EC2 instance via a CloudWatch event. And once that event is in place, we're then going to trigger an AWS Lambda function. Okay, so that function is going to receive the event from CloudWatch logs of a user having logged into the instance. And then what we're going to do inside that Lambda is we're actually going to line that user identity up and we're going to send it to Slack. Now, this is an example that was given to me and I've used time and time again a few years ago having a discussion with an enterprise where they set this up and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Now, I wish I could credit them in this, but I requested that they were not. This wasn't for public sharing, so I've anonymized it, but it is a brilliant scenario because what they're doing here is they're using Slack where most of their employees live, and they are bubbling up a yes or no. So when I log into an EC2 instance, CloudWatch logs that, sends it to CloudWatch events sends it to Lambda or triggers a Lambda. Lambda then looks up my username and hits me up in Slack and says, hey Mark, did you log into this EC2 instance, yes or no? Now, if I say yes, it will pop up with a little education message saying like, okay, that's fine, you have that right, but maybe you want to try to cut that down, blah, 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 right? Opportunity for in-context learning, which is very important when you're trying to change behavior. So instead of just going like, no, you're not allowed to do that, what we've done is set up a little guardrail here to start to educate your users. Like, hey, this is something you probably shouldn't be doing all the time, but we understand that you have that ability to do it for a reason. Maybe you need to fix something, you need to find a new bug, maybe you need some sort of access, whatever it may be. Okay, but if I say, no, this wasn't me in Slack, if I answer, no, I didn't log into this, that a Lambda will actually then kick off an incident response process because you ask the user like, hey, Mark, you logged into this instance, right? And I go, no, it wasn't me. Okay, now we need something to worry about. So not only have we set up a guardrail here, we've also set up a bit of a sensor to verify when we see malicious intent on our instances. It's like a win-win, okay? So keep this one in mind. It's not something we want to stop completely, but it's something that we want to strongly discourage, and we've used a guardrail to gently guide that user behavior in the direction that we want, okay? Overall, why do we want this thing? Like I said, it's a behavior that we want to change over time. We don't want to just say hard no. That's where security teams get really bad reputations. So we want to gently guide the users to the decisions that we want. Now, you may be arguing for access. Well, any data that you're getting from those instances should actually be automatically exported into some sort of analysis pipeline. So if you need logs off that system, you should be using CloudWatch logs or a third-party log service to get all that data off. You shouldn't have to log in. Similarly, any problems that you're fixing, like if you're applying a patch or tweaking a setting, you should be doing that in code, whether that's your application code or infrastructure code, earlier in the pipeline and then redeploying. You shouldn't be making changes in production because people make mistakes, right? And this harkens back to the long days before we didn't have a choice, when you had to log into every one of the servers you had and make the same change. I remember my days on Saturday nights and change windows. Those used to be a thing. We used to have to work Saturday nights. And you would sit there and go, okay, I've changed server 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and somehow you skip 7. You're like, oh, crap. But you don't figure that out, of course, till Monday, right? So the idea here is we want to put systems in place to be doing the work that people may be doing today on their EC2 instances. But until those systems are in place, until people get used to that, we use this guardrail to gently guide them in the direction that we want to go. Second one, this is something that just happens all the time. It's just natural. It's similar to when you buy a lot of storage, your data will always expand to fill that storage. It's just how it is. You will always have too many IAM permissions assigned to different things. And that's not a great thing, right? You want to keep permissions following the principle of least privilege, where they're only assigned the permissions they're required to do the task at the time they're required to do that task. Now, for IAM permissions, we're going to see a scenario where they're granted to a user. And in that case, we are going to want to put up a guardrail because we don't want to prevent people expanding their access within the environment because there's totally legitimate reasons why you would need this. However, we also want to discourage it, just like the last one. So we're going to use a guardrail again, gently guide people over into the behavior that we want. So when we see an IAM permission granted to a user, again, we're going to use a CloudWatch event. Now this is automatically occurs in the background. You just need to capture it to send off a trigger. And in this case, we are again going to go to Lambda. Love it. This is a great pattern. CloudWatch event fires off a Lambda, and that Lambda is then going to go into CloudTrail and search CloudTrail. CloudTrail, a lot of people think of it just as the thing that logs all our API calls. It actually has a pretty robust search feature within it as well, which I suggest you fully take advantage of. If not, you could go through Athena to search the data that's sitting in the S3 bucket without pulling it out of the S3 bucket. But in this case, what we're going to do is when a permission is assigned to somebody, we're going to trigger this event through CloudWatch events to a Lambda. In that Lambda, we're going to search CloudTrail to figure out what they have access to now, or if there's a group or something else that would be a better fit for them. And then again, we're going to go back to Slack and tell them and say, hey, Mark, you granted Fred these permissions. Maybe you don't need to do that because there's a group that covers that. Or you don't need to do that because those permissions actually are too broad. We're going to scope that down a little bit. So you have an opportunity, again, to interject and to educate in context. And that's absolutely key, I found over the years for security education, is that you want to educate at the moment when people are doing it. If I sit you down and do a day-long course in security and say, hey, this, all these things are bad, all these things are good, you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, you're not coming out of there with a ton of information. You're coming out of there with 1 or 2 nuggets and hopefully can remember some of the other things to look them up. That's not a great way to educate people. This kind of a guardrail where somebody's actually trying to accomplish a task and you're like, hi, excuse me, just 1 sec. You might want to think about this instead. Here's some data that will help you do that, or better yet, click here and I'll do it for you. This kind of intervention, this contextual intervention, is what guardrails are perfect for. They handle that maybe situation, right? I want to give you the ability to expand permissions for users in your environment, but I don't want you to go hog wild and just give everybody admin. So I'm going to take the opportunity when you are assigning permissions to educate in context. Now, why is this? Well, because permissions always creep scope over time. People just keep getting more and more permissions. It's basically like the law system. Very rarely do you repeal a law. You always just add a new one to cancel out that old one. IAM permissions are basically the same thing. We're just going to add more permissions and more permissions and more permissions. We're almost never going to go back and sweep them to remove them. Little tip, you should go back and sweep them. You should absolutely remove them. But also another tip is that you should be granting permissions to groups, not to users. You should add users into groups and then give the groups the permissions so that the users have very little direct permissions assigned to them. Ideally, they should have permissions for granting roles or assuming roles, but that should also be in groups. And that just makes it easier because then that way, if somebody leaves, you don't lose that permission set and you understand what tasks and what permissions line up together. So you should be managing that through groups. And again, like I said, permissions are almost never. I mean, I said rarely here just to be polite. Nobody ever removes permissions. You absolutely should be, but it's just a pain. It's one of those activities that people don't really do that often. So hitting them in context and saying like, hey, did you really need to do that is absolutely key. And again, if you're using roles to manage users, you should be using, groups to manage users. You absolutely should be using roles for specific tasks because people also don't need permissions permanently. If you need to check if the backup is running, you don't need to do that all the time. You probably need to do that once a week. So assume that role when you need to do it. Not having those permissions sitting around granted but unused is an absolutely key thing for reducing your security risk and reducing that attack surface. So some great ideas or some great reasoning why this guardrail is highly effective. So let's look at a third and final example here. And this one relates to secrets. I'm a big fan of AWS Secrets Manager, but there are some challenges around it, not to mention, not the smallest of which is the pricing, because people look at it and go, well, I should be using Parameter Store instead. I like Secrets Manager because it's this designated thing that's very clearly for special sensitive stuff. It's for secret stuff. So our last scenario, our last guardrail is here. You have a secret, it's something, and it's stored in Secrets Manager, but now you need to grant access to that secret, right? It's no good if it just stays there, it's in its vault and nobody ever accesses it. You need resources and people to be able to pull this secret out in certain contexts. So again, we're going to use a very similar pattern here. Secrets Manager, when we see activity via CloudWatch events for Secrets Manager, primarily for the storage of a new secret or application of new permissions to a secret, then what we want to do is fire off a Lambda, and within our Lambda, we're going to leverage IAM Access Analyzer. Now this is going to give us our ability to check to see who can actually access this thing. And that's going to give us a better idea of like, hey, did I actually keep this secret? Because I've seen this time and time again where somebody dumps a secret into a Secrets Manager, and then to get things working, all of a sudden they've got a really broad resource policy on it. And that's not a good thing. It's right in the name, secret. Keep it as secret as possible. So IAM Access Analyzer will help you leverage this and look at who has permissions to access it or what has permissions to access it. And then of course, if that's too broad, fire back to our old friend Slack. By the way, this is the official Slackbot icon. I absolutely love it. But most of us work daily in Slack, and this could be subbed out for Microsoft Teams. This could be subbed out for email. It could be any tool. The point is we're using whatever the users are most comfortable with to communicate back to them and say, hey, oh, you know that thing you're trying to keep secret? You've actually opened that up way broader than you should have, or than you realized, or maybe not. We're not sure. Here's the information. Make a decision. Is this yes or no? So again, perfect scenario for a guardrail. So why are we using this guardrail? Well, we want to keep those secrets, but just like permissions for users and roles and groups, scope creep comes in, right? When you're trying to get the secret used in production, you start to add more permissions until it works, and you rarely go back and remove things. So you can see that scope creep come in. And there's a lot, be honest, as much as I like this service, there's a lot required to properly connect it into things. So to make sure that Lambdas, especially cross-account, can actually access this secret, it gets really complicated really quickly. That's where the IAM Access Analyzer comes into play, and that's why we've used it in this guardrail, because people make mistakes. This is a recurring theme. People absolutely make mistakes, and that's okay. We're using this guardrail again to raise our hand and to say, hey, Mark, did you actually think that, that was the right call? Did you mean to open this secret up to the world? Did you mean to make sure that any AWS account could access this? Did you mean to just only lock this down to Jolene? What were you trying to do here? And again, context, we're using the guardrail to educate in context so that people understand like, oh, wait, no, that change I just made is bad, as opposed to a week from now going, that change you made that you totally forgot about and don't actually remember why you made, that was bad. That's the whole point of a guardrail. We're getting them in context in the moment. So what are your key takeaways here? We've talked about a couple different examples. We've talked about the different security controls. We've highlighted some use of guardrails. Now, AWS has a bunch of pre-configured guardrails. They just launched a new set available with Control Tower. You could implement them through AWS Config, which is actually just custom Lambda rules in the background. I like this kind of pattern we've been talking about leveraging CloudWatch events to fire off Lambdas to educate in context, because I think when you look at security controls, you've got those yes, you've got the no, then you want that maybe. So let's pull out our examples and look at a generic pattern. Something happens. I don't know what it is, something. It emits some sort of CloudWatch event. Now, almost anything you do in the AWS cloud actually has a CloudWatch event behind it. Anything in CloudTrail is a CloudWatch event. And there's a bunch of other stuff that you can set up as custom events as well. So we have these events and we want to send them to Event Bridge. Again, very low cost for Event Bridge in general, and serverless. And the reason why we're sending it into Event Bridge is because then based on the content of the event, we can route it to where we want. So Event Bridge will now emit an Event Bridge event. And little trick here is that CloudWatch events and Event Bridge events are built on top of CloudWatch events. It's just they're a little bit more flexible. And they include third-party services, APN partners, things like that. So we have something in our environment that emits a CloudWatch event. We're going to capture that in Amazon Event Bridge, and then we are going to have an Event Bridge event that we will route wherever we need to go. So in our case, we've seen Lambda a bunch of times. Maybe we are kicking off a new build in code build, for the 10 people that use code build. Or maybe we're kicking off a message into Slack. The goal here is this with generic pattern based on the contents of that event. Amazon Event Bridge will route it to the appropriate receiver. Now, here's the key. This is what makes this whole thing work, is that your trigger, your receiver, can actually send it back to Event Bridge. So in our case, we had all of our Lambdas directly triggering Slack. That's a waste, you can deduplicate that code by just having one Slack Lambda, and anything that comes in with the proper webhook URL, it will be formatted properly. So we're gonna actually process most of our stuff in Lambda and then send it back into Event Bridge to go to Slack. This generic pattern is very flexible, it's very scalable, it makes it really, really easy to manage because all your business logic, all your security guardrail logic is now sitting in Event Bridge as a set of Event Bridge rules that match specific patterns. Okay, very straightforward, very simple, very low cost to implement at scale, and it's entirely serverless in the backend, so you're not running additional infrastructure. Remember, the goal here, we have security controls that handle yes and no. What we need is guardrails that handle the maybe case. This is a scenario where we have no clear yes or no answer, but we have a good opportunity to educate, to inform, and to highlight like, hey, you're doing something that could have some risk. Here's the risk. Here's what you need to know about it. Make an informed decision. That's what the guardrail is really there for. It's not to prevent you from doing something. It's to give you the information you need to know at the time you need to know it to make the best decision for you and your environment. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. People make mistakes. It totally happens. The idea with a guardrail, again, in addition to that education and context, is to help you make the right call. So to reduce those mistakes. That's it. It's not that complicated. Using this very simple, scalable, serverless, generic, low-cost pattern, you can make a lot of great guardrails that are customized to your environment, because it doesn't just have to be AWS services. You can have your application spitting these things out. You can have build scripts. You can have anything you want using this pattern to highlight, hey, you might want to think twice about this. Here's some additional information about that. That's really the goal of a guardrail. I hope you can see the value of that and implement it within your environment. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Nunakoven. I'm an AWS Community Hero. You can hit me up online at marknca or go to my website, markn.ca. Hope this has been useful, and I can't wait to see what guardrails you build for your environment and hopefully share with the rest of the community.
All right. Hopefully that was enlightening for you. I learned a bunch of stuff in there, and thankfully I'm joined also on the stream tonight by Mark himself, who right now is joining us from Ottawa in Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
How's the weather and what time is it? I guess are the two main questions.
It's just coming up at 2:00 in the afternoon, and the weather is really nice for Ottawa. So we don't have snow yet, which is good. We got another couple of weeks before that hits, but it's a nice fall day.
Is Ottawa the type of place where actually everything kind of grinds to a halt when it snows, or are you used to it sufficiently that it's all fine?
Yeah, everything's totally fine. We have more snow removal equipment than most countries do. The only thing that shuts down the airport would be a polar bear hanging off the wing of a plane. Yeah, we don't shut down because we get about 3 meters of snow over the course of the winter. So yeah, it's not a problem.
Yeah, good stuff. Good to see your video production giving mine a run for its money. It's nice to see someone else polishing their stuff. But let's talk a bit about the tech stuff that we're here to talk about before we start veering off into like black magic switches and all that kind of stuff, which I assure you we're going to talk about, but maybe not on this feed. So one question I always have when it comes to grouping permissions for people is, how exactly do you assign groups and put people in those groups? What are the kind of I guess the striations through your organization that you create those groups within? What's the sort of guidance on that?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, John. And it's tricky to find the balance, because if you go too broad, you're going to end up with 2 or 3 groups and people are going to get over permissioned. But if you get too narrow and too specific, then you're going to create a management headache. So you run out of
IAM like group connections as well, right? You can only have 10 at a time or something.
Exactly. It gets kind of ridiculous quickly. So this is where roles really come into play. So I like to think about it as, what are the tasks that needs to get done? And the tasks should really line up with the roles. And then you can kind of figure out your groups based on the people who need to assume various roles. So you can say, well, we know everybody in finance, regardless of which group within finance they are, needs this particular set of workflows, so they can assign these rules. So we're going to put them all into a particular group, because then we can just provide the group with the access to those roles. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's just really kind of try to find that middle ground where you're not going too deep, or you're not going to, or staying too shallow, so that you can really divide it up just to make your role management easier. And that's probably the best way to think about it, is that groups make managing roles simpler.
Right, and you mentioned the finance team there, not traditionally logging into our Amazon accounts very often. I guess using roles is obviously really, really useful. There's quite a bit of friction in sort of switching between roles and kind of thinking in those terms. Do you have a good a hack or a trick or tooling for I guess educating users on how and why to do that, and why you're putting that friction in their lives, and I guess anything to make that friction as painless as you can, essentially?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I mean, yes, I use finance because I'm ambitious. I want to see the extent, the reach extend out. But also I think tools like QuickSight and Athena are horrendously underused, where they can be immensely valuable to teams like finance and other areas in the company. But as far as switching roles, you hit it right on the head. It's a pain. In fact, almost everything to do with IAM and with authentication in AWS, unless you just have one thing to do, is really challenging. So as far as how to make that easier, keep complaining. keeps getting on the AWS team and saying, hey, we need a way to make this smoother. But realistically, it comes down to some level of automation in scripting for yourself to make that context change. So if you have a bunch of tasks to perform under a specific role, I like to think of it, I do a lot of coding in Python. I like to think about it like a virtual environment in Python, where if you've got a specific set of libraries that you want to use, you create an isolated little environment that those libraries are loaded in, and you do all your stuff there, and then you get out of it. It's the same idea for roles. I'll have a set of scripts or tasks that I do under that role. So I'll context switch into that role, using a little script on my command line or in whatever program or solution I'm in, and then I'll do execute those roles under that and then back out again. But I wish I had a good answer and like, hey, if you just did A, B, and C, it'd be super easy. It's not. It's never going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we tend to use AWS Vault to kind of make that a little bit more comfortable. It certainly solves a lot of that problem. But the challenges always seem to be, I guess, whenever you put a security control in place, it makes somebody's life a little bit difficult, and they don't always see the thing that you are trading their simplicity off for as valuable. And I guess the education story there is the sort of the key thing. You mentioned educating context, which is of course a really smart way of like we learn in management theory that giving feedback sort of immediately after the thing that you want to feed back on has happened, like attaching sort of education to activities in the way that you described sounds like a great idea. What's the broader education picture look like? How are you thinking about helping teams understand what's important, helping them understand why you're kind of giving them difficult things to do, introducing them to the risk landscape? What does that look like for you from a kind of, I guess, a modernizing security practices perspective?
Yeah, and again, spot on. You're always trading something off when you put a security control in place. And I'll be perfectly honest, the security community generally does a really bad job of explaining that at the time. Look at the adoption or lack of adoption of two-factor authentication on popular, social services in Gmail. We don't explain what the advantage is, where the advantage is massive for a minor interface, friction. So most things you see within an organization, especially large enterprises, around security awareness training, generally is really bad. A lot of it actually is wrong. So like things around passwords, we've messed that up for years. Passwords are super easy to understand. The longer, the stronger. That's it. Don't worry about them mixing all this, blah, blah, blah. Like super long, very strong. So it's really, when you go into talking to people about, hey, you're building an AWS, I don't like to take a traditional security approach. What I like to do is just say the goal of the security perspective is really just to make sure that whatever you're building works the way you want it to and only does what you want it to. And when you come at it from that angle, you start to talk more about resiliency, about availability, and you start to get into more architectural discussions, which is where you can start to make better security decisions earlier on. So I think taking that different approach of saying, instead of coming in and saying, we're trying to stop bad things from happening, or we're trying to, put these controls in place to make sure we hit some weird compliance requirement. You just talk about how the goal of all of this activity of looking at risk and looking at security is really just to make sure that whatever you're building actually works the way you want it to.
Yeah, good perspective. Just as an aside, those of you on the Twitch chat, if you have any questions for Mark that you're itching to ask, please go ahead and type those in the chat, and we'll come to those as and when you do that. Tim actually asked earlier while you were, which you've answered in the chat, but let's do this for the video. Clarifying that the guardrail you were using for Secrets Manager is on write. You're saying if someone introduces a new secret, then report on who might have access to that. That seems like a good thing to do. You mentioned another time you might want to do that. Do you want to explain what that was?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other use case would be anytime that somebody makes a change to the resource policy around that secret as well. That's an area where people tend to make mistakes quite often, and because of the complexity and some of the challenges of understanding how those resource policy works. So you can flag that when there is a change to then essentially just reevaluate and come back and say, okay, you made that change. You thought you opened it up to John and to Mark. You actually opened it up to the entire user group. was that what you intended? Yes or no? So hitting it there is a really good idea. And again, same workflow works for that. You're just capturing an additional event to trigger it.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that I didn't sort of fully follow in what you were talking about, the sort of yes and no scenario is very straightforward, right? You're denying the thing or you're allowing it. This maybe thing, I think what you're saying is that based on an interaction in Slack triggered by one of these events, you are allowing or denying. Are you sort of rolling back changes as a result of someone saying, oh shit, no, I didn't mean to make that quite as public? So there's a sort of time window where those secrets might actually be open, but you're sort of rolling that back pretty quickly after the fact. Or is there some other kind of gating that you're using to, I guess, stage that change and then prevent it if it was the wrong thing to do?
Yeah, depending on your risk tolerance, you can do either. And that's the beauty of this. And really the idea of the talk was to highlight that, the yes and no tends to be pretty straightforward. You can, grant a permission or deny a permission. And so somebody could do something or they couldn't. But there's a lot of stuff in security where practitioners think of it as yes, no, when you actually want to extend some level of trust and say, John, you know what you're doing in the environment, but there's still some areas where you may want a reminder because of things changing so much in the AWS side or the complexity of what you're dealing with. So we're trusting you, but we're also going to provide that information in context. So depending on my level of trust, you could even do both, whereas we'll let you make those changes and then ask you afterwards, but only after you've made a few changes where we queued them and verified that they were what you wanted. So you could write it any way you choose. The workflow is the same. And it really depends on the culture that you have within your environment. You may want to divide it between, junior engineers are always queued and the change isn't immediately made until they've confirmed it. Whereas for senior and up, you do make that change and ask after the fact. It's really quite flexible.
Yeah, I think the big thing that's changed for me in my thinking about security over the last few years has been thinking about trust as a continuum rather than a binary. The Zero Trust Networks book from O'Reilly from a few years ago, which doesn't have any sort of technical implementation detail, but talks philosophically about this, talking about actually I trust you if. I trust you like completely if you're on my network and you've logged in with a password and you've given a second factor in a certain time window and you're doing things that you usually do and you're in an office that you're usually in and that kind of stuff, and all of those factors might tend towards a lower trust score somewhere that might encourage that platform to ask you to give it to a second factor again or just deny access, because actually if you're usually in London and you're usually accessing system A and now you're going routing in the documentation for system B, that might be troublesome and you should probably flag that with somebody and deny that. So that's the linearity of trust is really interesting. I would posit, I think, that IAM doesn't today have anything to think about trust in those terms, right? Other than maybe guard duty saying, "Oh, this doesn't look like a thing you usually do."
It's starting to, and I like the philosophical approach because I think you start to understand the reasons behind things, and that's really what we're missing in security in general. Is we tend to, as a community, proclaim a lot of things. You will never do this, and we never tell you why. But for IAM on the technical side, it's starting to get better with conditions. The more nuanced the conditions are getting, the more you're able to do scenarios like you said, as far as if you're logging in with your normal credentials and you're coming in over a VPN, things like that, or you're coming from a jump host, you can start to put that nuance in place. It's not as fully fleshed out as I'd like to see it, but it's getting there. But the challenge, I think, is that the demand's not there yet, because it's easier to think of such a complicated topic as trust in the yes/no terms. So people aren't demanding the granularity yet, but it's slowly changing.
Gotcha. So you're a strategist at Lacework. You talk about working with teams. Are these teams within Lacework or customers of Lacework? What's your sort of scope of influence there?
Everywhere. So I work with teams internally for sure. Obviously, we build our solution to the cloud for the cloud. But that's the community hero thing. Just basically trying to modernize security in general. I'm not, I work more on the research and the strategy side, so I'm not as concerned with the product. I don't touch sales or anything like that. I just want to help people understand that security isn't as horrible as they think it is. It's not so yes or no. It's not such a roadblock. There are better ways to do it, and there's reasons to do all this stuff, and it doesn't run counter to the business. So anywhere I can help, I generally try to.
Yep, great stuff. And final bonus question, I suppose. What's the best hero swag you've received from that program?
Good question. There's lots of stuff. So the most useful is probably we got a really nice, like, soft, fuzzy blanket a while back. That's great for the winter when you're curling up on the couch. But the most ridiculous I could tell you is a couple years ago we got spinner medals, like big, like 80s hip hop bling medals with AWS Hero that spin in the middle.
Marvelous. Yeah, nothing like that in the Ambassador network. I got a nice rucksack. That's probably the the extent of that. It's got a pocket in the front that's insulated, so you can put a sandwich in it. I thought that was good forward thinking. Anyway, Mark, thanks for your time. Thanks for putting the video together for us. Hopefully we'll see you again. I imagine we could talk for hours about other things. But yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. That's Mark, all the way from Canada. So I should probably also remind you at this point that you can still enter the prize draw. The details are now coming up on your screen. The QR code, or I'm sure Paul is about to repaste the URL. Just a reminder: we cannot post any of these prizes out to you if you're outside the UK. So unless you can receive a UK delivery, then please don't enter. Otherwise, you will be sad if you win and you can't have your goodies. Next up, then, we are joined by Kirk Ryan and Mark Toomey, who are going to be giving us some details about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. Kirk is principal technologist at NetApp. He's the technical lead for cloud communities across the EMEA region. He's also an AWS community builder. I actually don't know what the swag's like for the AWS community builders, so we're going to be asking that question later. He's also a Microsoft MVP for Azure, but we're definitely not going to be talking about that. Mark Toomey is EMEA lead of AWS Storage Solutions Architecture, and he's going to be joining us from Cork in Ireland after their talk, which I'm about to queue up now. Please do sit back and enjoy hearing about this new storage service.
Hello, AWS User Group UK. Would love to be with you in person, but because of the lives that we're all leading at the moment, I'm stuck at home. I am the head of solutions architecture for the storage specialist team at AWS in EMEA. And I'm here with a friend of mine who, while I'm in the home office, he's currently locked outdoors. Kirk, tell us about it.
Hi everyone, and warm welcome to the user group here. So yeah, as you can see, I have a different, not fake background today. And I'm taking remote working to the extreme because I actually got locked out of my house. So I'm actually doing this from the garden. But, we'll keep the excitement levels up for today's session, and just something a little bit different for everyone.
I could have helped you there and just said you were getting the last of the summer in, but no, just decided to let you know currently he's out in his backyard at the moment. Yes. And at some stage I may remotely unlock his house and leave him back in. No, that's not.
It's a new beta feature of the Ring doorbell.
How dare you, sir? It's like, it's all good. But yeah, so thank you for joining us today. Where this session was because it was planned ahead. I think we were looking at doing a much more generic file server session about how you manage file data in enterprise environments or in any IT environment. But we went that direction because we had a brand new service. We at AWS had a brand new service coming out, and it hadn't been announced yet. So today, what we're probably going to focus on, we'll touch on the other file system as well, what we're going to focus on is the Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP file system. What a mouthful. Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, SEO out the window, right? So there you go. You just put your search engine optimization in there, SEO all over the place. I use the shorthand FSXN.
That's it. FSXN. That's we're starting this here. This is what it will be.
Yeah, this is what it's going to be known as, FSXN. When we talk about our FSX line of managed service file systems, there's a number of them now. There's 3 of them now. There's Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP, which we're going to be discussing today. There's Amazon for FSX Windows File Server, and then there's Amazon for FSX Lustre, right? 3 different things. You're wondering, what are the use cases? Well, if you look at if I was to make it easy, I think the on-premises comparison would be for FSXN, it's going to be NetApp and other enterprise storage arrays that you may have deployed on premises. So that's a good comparison. For FSXW, right, for Windows File Server, you're talking about Windows File Servers who have that entire end-to-end Windows File Server environment that you've deployed. And then for FSX for Lustre, FSXL, parallel file systems, your machine learning, your HPC, your media processing. So you have your Lustre, which are machine learning, data analytics, etc., etc. You have FSX for Windows, which is going to be your general purpose Windows file shares. And then you have FSXN, our new edition, which is going to be, again, general purpose file systems, databases, dev test, if you want to do ONTAP storage in the cloud, right? ONTAP storage in the cloud. And that's where we see that. And the advantage of this model, by doing what we've done, 3 file systems there, we're going to focus on one, is using that FSX technology that we have to deliver an incredibly popular enterprise grade file system, NetApp ONTAP. And it's not just a file system, it's an entire operating system with data management features built in. But to deliver that as a fully managed service with the AWS pricing model, you get block and file support. You're talking iSCSI, NFS, SMB. There is automatic tiering built in there. There is auditing with things like F-policy. There is vScan for antivirus. When you start using this thing, I am going to say you're going to look at it, you go, oh, that's the ONTAP I know, and hopefully you'll just get on and do your job, right? That's
no caveats.
If we do the job well, you're going to have, and you're going to be able to deploy ONTAP file systems up to 192 terabytes in the performance tier and petabyte scale in the capacity tier with automatic tiering to move the data between those 2 tiers. And you're talking for read throughput, I think is something like 2 gig per second, write throughput 1 gig up to 1 gig a second. So it's all very exciting, and it's all enterprise file storage. So Kirk, you are work for our partner on this technology, NetApp. So it is an AWS managed service, but of course those decades of feature functionality that NetApp have worked on are what are going to be exposed in the service. What's the NetApp view on this?
I mean, this is obviously a phenomenal offering for anyone that's looking at either migrating services to the cloud. Of course, if you live and breathe NetApp, you've got an existing NetApp system. Basically, it's just got very easy to extend or move your entire NetApp estate into AWS. So it's very simple because you don't lose any functionality. You pay for it in your AWS model. It's supported through all your native AWS support case. Everything is just as you would expect an AWS service. My view on this as well is that for the first time, you're starting to look at sort of unification of file systems as well. Up until this point, it's always been very difficult to architect systems to share data quite quickly between each other, especially more legacy applications. They weren't built that way. There was always, here's a server, here's a storage, that's attached to that. And then there were other solutions you had to put in there to share things. Obviously, modern architecture very different. You know, you're more on buses and queues and things like that. But for those things where you may be looking at, how do I go and move some of these applications or these gigantic multiple gigabytes of data in a very supported fashion, maintaining my permissions, maintaining my structures, maintaining my entire business process of how we manage and secure and do all of the things that you do today without having to retrain or re-architect. I think that's a huge win for a lot of people that are looking to do this in AWS as well. The other thing that I like about it is this, of course, you have been able to do this with CVO, so cloud volumes on tap, but that was always, it was infrastructure as a service mainly. So you'd have to go and deploy it, patch it, which arguably, okay, it's like the App Store, you get a little red dot, click upgrade, and that was it really. But it's still, it wasn't self-managing, it wasn't any of that. Here, everything is done for you. So you are literally saying, please give me 1 terabyte of NFS storage or 1 terabyte of SMB storage. Or do you know what? How about I get a few terabytes of SMB and NFS storage so that my Unix clients that need to talk to my Windows scanners as a process can all share one storage instead of me having to buy the storage twice and think of some weird replication process between the two. Why don't I just natively have that there? And we see a lot of that in like genome sequencing and medical and those sort of use cases as well. So I think this is fantastic to see for AWS, the fact that you can get all the great benefits of an extremely popular, what up until now has been a marketplace offering, as a native, fully managed AWS service, and it's great to see.
And I like you raised the point on multi-protocol there, and it's a good one because with multi-protocol, you can sometimes just brush that off where people go, does it support multi-protocol? You go, oh, do you really need it? I mean, we've this, that, and the other. But I think, and it's a small percentage of your market, but it tends to be a critical percentage of data, right? A critical percentage of data that needs this SMB or NFS access, and now that's going to be available through AWS. CVO, CVS, those are the other NetApp offerings that are out there. I think the differentiator here is the FSXN, Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP, is completely part of the AWS ecosystem. So heading towards 200 services, right? We're heading towards 200 services inside of AWS, and it is going to be the case that as time rolls on, deeper and deeper integrations are going to be available from those services and FSXN. So if if today you might be using it for, if you decide to use it, you might use it for cloud bursting, you might do various other things, but it's going to come down to the fact that you want to wire it up to artificial intelligence, the AI services, you want to do SageMaker, you want to do all these things. Those are, if they don't exist, if the interactions aren't there today, they're going to be there soon. Because once this thing is in, it's going to begin connecting to every other service that's going to be available out there. So the base infrastructure already is, key management is already in there. It's billing, etc., capacity, putting how you deploy, throughput. All these things are going to be integrated. Well, they are integrated right now. But the thing is that it's just what services do we add from here? We have this expression at Amazon, which anyone who's used to hearing from people from Amazon will be tired of. It's always day one. Well, it's day one here for FSX, for NetApp ONTAP as well. And as time goes on, we're going to go off and start wiring in all these additional services to NetApp ONTAP and allow people to leverage the rest of AWS, and that's quite exciting when you consider what it can do for you, what it can enable for you with just you making a decision instead of you going off having to get do this. You can make a decision. You can try something. Try the experiment. It may succeed. It may fail. Hey, when you're done, tear it down. And that's the whole thing as well with the FSXN. When you're done, you can leave it there, or if not, you can just rip it down and move on to the next thing. And that doesn't matter if you have petabytes of data up there, or if you have you just have a few gig, right? So, usually the terabyte.
And to coin the elasticity of the service there, the fact that you can scale up and scale down, you can match that utilization curve, both in terms of storage but also performance as well, means that you can be optimized both from a consumption perspective but also a cost perspective, because those two obviously go hand in hand. The closer you can match your utilization, if it's predictable, brilliant. If it's unpredictable, you can probably come up with something that can kind of start identifying when demand increases or decreases. And I suppose that comes to a nice point of, well, how can you interact with it as well? So we can show you, and we'll show you a little bit later, obviously, of course, it's in the web console. You can see that there. But you've got the CLI and obviously all the native APIs available as well, right? So yeah, again,
there's-
just to say, it's fully integrated.
And there is, I believe, NetApp have a cloud manager piece of software that's available. And some of my colleagues who would have in-depth NetApp experience, they just logged in with the NetApp CLI, the REST interface, were able to do it. And they looked at it and went, yeah, that's fine. And then they moved off and they just like, yep, that's on tap. I know it.
That's on tap.
And away they went, right? And the thing, it being a fully managed service, is that absolutely great deep partnership with NetApp going back years at this stage. But this is an AWS service, which means you acquire it from us, we operate it, we take care of the high availability because that's how it's deployed. It's deployed in a high availability fashion. We take care of all the replication under the covers to make sure that there is that high availability. And if you have a support request, that comes through us, right? So it is an end-to-end, great, deep technical partnership with NetApp, but you can acquire it however you choose to acquire it. You can simply go to the console, press the button, billing starts, so you start using it.
Yeah, absolutely. So gone are the days where, you're waiting a few weeks for some kit to arrive. You've got to rack, stack, cable it, and then worry about making sure it doesn't overheat and things like that. All that's gone. AWS deal with that for you. So you are simply saying, please give me some space for my use case, and I can tag it and manage it in just the same way I do all my other AWS resources. I can secure it in the same way, and as Mark was saying there, you can integrate and use it in the native services. I believe EKS was one of the first ones that was integrated. So if you are in the world of Kubernetes and you're looking at, could I get some more highly available storage and flexible storage for my requirements? We've seen some great success with people plumbing things on tap into Kubernetes and seeing everything from decreased build times, increased throughput, lower latencies, and just the fact that they can then add the protective services around it as well. So instant backup, instant restore, cloning, and the other features that can really help your processes when it comes to testing, UAT, and other environments as well. There's so much so that we've got to try and cram it in the next 5 minutes. But with that, I'll just share the tab, and I suppose let's show the audience, Mark, what it looks like and how to get started.
That'd be great.
Okay. So what we've got here is basically the main FSX tab. You can see I've got to it just directly through my portal, so you can see it is entirely native. So through the management console, I can just click FSX. I'm not going in the marketplace here at all. And if it's the first time you're going in, you'll be you will see the FSX main landing page, and you can see, as Mark mentioned there are a variety of services with FSXN, as we'll call it now, being the latest there. So if we go to actually create a file system, again, nothing too new here. You can see FSXN, and it tells you some of the main features there. We already showed, look, extremely feature-rich. This is one of the most feature-rich storage operating systems on the planet today. Everything from the highly optimized block-level replication. How can that change the world for you? Well, we pay data egress charges, remember, when we move things between regions? Basically, if you move less data, you're going to pay less. Very quick win for a lot of people there, especially moving things in and out of it. And again, if you are an existing on-tap customer, just remember, you've probably got a 2, maybe 3 to 1 storage efficiency right now on a lot of your systems. So you've just reduced the payload that you have to move into AWS by a third compared to if you had to replicate it using it and rehydrate it and everything else. So that's going to have a direct impact on reducing the amount of time that it takes you to move data into AWS, and also the costs as well associated with doing that. So obviously moving your data in the cloud is free, but you may have some hybrid architecture where data comes back out again. That's going to be a great sort of benefit that you'll get from the system. We mentioned it is, again, Linux, Windows, Mac OS compute instances as well, running both on AWS or on premises. And it is the industry standard NFS, SMB, and iSCSI protocols. I believe it's 3, 4, 4.1, and obviously iSCSI as well. All the management capabilities. So snapshots, hey, we've all heard about snapshots. Well, another half an hour session, I can tell you why NetApp snapshots different to anyone else. I'm not going to go down that route. Just remember, these are some of the fastest restores you'll ever see in the industry. Absolutely fantastic. So if you do have a major issue with business continuity, a corruption, a crypto lock, whatever it may be, these are your get out of jail card, and they are extremely quick, regardless of the data size. SnapMirror is our brand name for replication, so that is an extremely efficient block level replication. And then if you ever do a copy operation, please don't. Just use a flex clone. It means you can do it instantly. So you don't have to wait for that little blue bar in Windows saying that it's 99 minutes estimated. You come back after 600 minutes and it's still saying it's 99%.
Yeah, just finishing up, just finalizing.
All there. And then, of course, anything that can reduce your footprint in terms of the data. So compression, there's compaction under the covers that you won't see. And then there's obviously deduplication as well. One of the things Mark mentioned there, the tiering. So did you know 99% of data, once it's written and accessed in the first minute, is never accessed ever again? So why not automatically have your storage system put that in the coldest tier without having to re-architect your applications? That's exactly what this is going to do for you. And of course, there's the usual things that you come to expect that we take for granted, Mark, really, like normal Microsoft Active AD support, just things that we take for granted. But I have seen in other deployments and things like that, where things like that aren't supported can be a real headache when they're not. So here we go. Let's do the AWS User Group UK. We'll put some capacity in. So maybe we'll do 2 terabytes for now, 2048. It goes straight into VPC as well, so it's like a private endpoint straight into VPC, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So you'll get one in each availability zone for high availability, so your endpoints will exist. You'll then take care of the failover between those as is required. Which
is awesome, right? It's not a public IP, it's secured, it's directly connected to your systems there. And storage efficiency, I don't know why this is even an option, to be honest, but yeah, enabled.
Yeah, and it's not like you're paying for CPU or something, you just turn it on.
Crank it, crank it to 11. Yeah.
Get it going, yeah. It's like it's savings everywhere, saving replication, savings data on disk, great savings. Keep going. Sorry, Kurt.
No worries. And this is basically 5 years of ONTAP expertise. I mean, at the time, I was an ONTAP expert for a few years back before I jumped into the cloud and left that knowledge behind. But this is basically everything I needed to know has just been done in, 2 screens? So my file system, it's already going to be highly available. It's multi-AZ. I'm using SSD for my fast data. Here's my IOPS. Here's my throughput capacity and all the other bits and pieces that you can see on there with backup already built in.
Yeah.
So
backup built in, maintenance window taken care of too.
Excellent. Tagging as well. So obviously, if you're automating any of this or cost management or billing, any of that, tagging fully supported. Again, it is a native AWS resource. And then just some things around, here's the file system, and I'll hit create. And typically it's around just less than 20 minutes or so, isn't it, Mark?
It's about that, yeah. It's a 15, 20 minutes. I would have an exact number for you, but I set it going, went downstairs, boiled the kettle. There was a bit of that came upstairs. Oh, we're done. That was how it went when I did it the first time. So I was like, yeah, I don't need to time it. I know it's 15, 20 minutes. We'll be good.
Exactly. So that's it. I mean, really powerful system. Invite everyone here to have a look at that, try it out. If you're wondering where it is, just any search will get you there. FSXN, FSX, NetApp for ONTAP, whatever to call it this week. And we thoroughly invite you to try it out, give it a go, and really look forward to any questions that you have from this session today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kirk. Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP. How do you get there? You can get there with SnapMirror. You can get there with DataSync. You can get there with Snowball. You can get there with NetApp Cloud Sync, I believe. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can get there with RoboCopy. So it's entirely up to you how you want to get there, but get there. And this was great. But this is, as I said, it's always day one at AWS. There's this now. There's more coming as we add more to this technology going forward. It's going to be a hell of an adventure. So looking forward to that, and come along with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so we're now joined from inside his house, Kirk, and inside his house, Mark. Welcome to the meetup group, as it is in its virtual incarnation. very interesting to see this as a whole thing. To be honest, like I think of NetApp as kind of boring on-prem stuff. Like, been around a long time, solved a lot of problems, like just sort of disappears into the background. Now seeing it show up in AWS, pretty interesting. With my SA Pro hat on, as I'm sure some of the people on the Twitch chat are also Solutions Architect Pro certified people. I'm always interested in kind of where does this fit next to everything else, right? We already had EFS, which was an NFS store. This seems to do things involving kind of moving data from on-prem into the cloud. Like, how does that compare to the storage gateway stuff? Like, talk me through why you would use this over those other offerings in an infrastructure.
If I'll just drop in here first. Thanks for having us on.
Sure.
It is a case that I did leave my house. The shirt changed, you should notice, in case you thought I was stuck indoors and he was. But what I will say is, and I just want to point out, Mark earlier raised the bar on videos. He truly did. When I was watching his presentation earlier. But where this to get your question. Why this matters is quite simply is that there are a significant number of file systems available that do a multitude of different things. What the functionality that's inside of the FSX for NetApp ONTAP offering is significant in that it offers multi-protocol, in that it has data management functionality that has evolved over a number of years. So there is a place for the portfolio that we have in place with Amazon, be it EFS, with NFS, FSX for Windows Server, for file server consolidation. There's Lustre. There is now this. A significant number of customers on premises are using NetApp for particular workloads, electronic design workloads. There are things that there are advantages to this to the storage operating system and its data management features that customers said, I would love to go to AWS, but there's things I need. And you know what? This is a way of bringing customers what they asked for.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Anything to add to that, Kirk, or has Mark covered the breadth of it?
Yeah, I think Mark's covered a lot of it there, but it is just really this is the same. If you look at your estate and if you do have a SAN or a NAS in place, then this is the easiest way of moving a lot of those workloads, whether you move them entirely or you bridge it in a hybrid fashion, directly into AWS. And it will be supported as you would expect with all the features, not just the fact there's the volume available, but everything around that, how you monitor it, how you provision it, how you can scale the performance. In much the same way as obviously, we've said anyone with ONTAP will immediately be at home with this product. It is ONTAP. There's no, we haven't taken features and nerfed them anywhere or anything like that. But really to him is you don't need ONTAP to use this. If you have any SAN or NAS that's on-prem and you've been thinking this is quite a difficult workload to move, perhaps it's the performance envelope, perhaps it's that the compliance requirements you have around it that just require things like F policy, for example, then you can now move those very quickly and easily, but very efficiently directly into AWS because of the replication technologies that are also built in as well. So, I'll see that as it'll be a very popular service because of all the offerings that it has around the actual file serving as the primary piece.
Mm-hmm.
And some people standardize, just to jump in on that, some people standardize on the snap and replicate technology as well. It's what they have a heavy investment in, and that preserves that investment, even if it is your stuff on premises.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the main features that I've absolutely loved for a long time is the ability to, if you ever find yourself doing a copy of anything and watching a bar incrementally grow, you can get rid of that. You can clone entire environments in less than the blink of an eye without consuming any additional space. And if it sounds like magic, go and give it a go, because this is what made NetApp the company it is today. And now, just to really hit home, this is now an AWS managed service, and you get to do this without having to learn the 5 years worth of NetApp that you probably would have had to learn to get this value out of it. So it's fantastic to be able to get this as a managed service directly from AWS. Yeah. And it's not a marketplace offering, it's a first party AWS offering.
Right. So I guess the marketplace offering was previously an AMI running on a EC2 instance kind of setup, and today I'm assuming you may not be able to answer this. I'm assuming that this is now it's a first party service in as far as it is running on Nitro hardware and has access to all the storage, backplane, and everything that all of the other kit has in order to reach.
Sorry, you're breaking up there. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like I appear to have wandered into the wrong call. Is that the doorbell? Always, I understand being a technologist myself why people are interested in such things. But what it is, all you need to know is that it's a fully managed AWS service. What happens after that, we leave that to a bunch of experts that we have in house. It's magic.
Yeah. I figured we might not get an answer to that question. So the fact that this is not a marketplace offering, what does that mean that if today I'm using NetApp ONTAP as an AMI from the marketplace, is it worth me just adopting this wholesale and migrating to it? What are the things that I get to not have to do every day or every week or every month if I adopt this managed service over and above the marketplace offering?
It's a great question, and Mark, I'll just have a quick 30 seconds on that. Where I believe it comes in is the question of, do you want to continue with infrastructure as a service, or would you like your storage as a service? So removing the fact that the cloud volumes on tap piece, the infrastructure is provided by AWS, but you're still responsible for updating the actual application that's run on there, on tap itself, everything else. In terms of features and functionality, very, very much the same. But the other alternative you get is increased performance, because you can break through the limits of what's typically possible within a VM running an AMI. Again, just that full wraparound of you get the added benefit of the native portal for managing it, the native logging capabilities, the native APIs, the CLI, or with the AWS badge in it, as opposed to having that just it's not a massive pitfall, but you have to learn the NetApp way of doing things. This new way, you can do it the AWS way.
Right, and is all of the functionality of ONTAP now therefore presented through AWS APIs, or are there some things that you would still need to go to the sort of traditional NetApp interfaces to manage?
I would say if you are an existing NetApp user and you have a deep understanding of the REST API that ONTAP presents, what I would do is that I would just simply kick up your file system, start going through the NetApp CLI. You're going to just zoom along the way you typically zoomed along. The majority, and I don't want to, because people will come back and say, what about point odd? That doesn't appear to be there right now. The majority of functionality is there. It's set up I just want to swing back to the earlier question. I mean, yes, you can deploy things as EC2 instances, IP them, security groups, patch them, etc., etc. Manage service, on the other hand, click, 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 boom, CloudFormation. It's there in a CloudFormation template, so on. It's a fully managed service. So you should expect that. And when it comes to performance tuning as well, heavily performance tuned. So what you should expect for the advantages of all of this, the fact that you can you have all that in place, and you have the feature functionality of ONTAP, and the majority of it is there. You're going to ask me, well, what isn't? Well, the thing is that nothing major springs to mind that isn't right now, but I'm sure there's always something. Someone would say, well, there's a feature in the user interface that's mauve. Can it be mauve again? But the thing is that this is the ONTAP, right? So just get at it.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Anything else to add before we wrap up? Is there anything that you wish that I'd asked that I haven't, or that you forgot to put in the video as a side effect of accidentally being outside?
It's 75 days to reinvent. That's all I want to throw in right now. So what do you do? Why aren't you ready yet? No, it's 75 days to reinvent. I will say I'd like to thank you for your time. I understand that when we were discussing doing this, was before the service was announced, and there were some awkward questions. What do you want to talk about? And it was like, It's like nothing, but you indulged us in that matter. But so I appreciate that. But I would say about this is that it is a case. It's there. It's in the user interface. Go get it. Right. It's if you're looking for file-based storage, iSCSI-based storage, and this is for whatever workload you have. It's there. Go at it. Highly available. We take care of failover. We take care of patching. We take care of backup. Shared responsibility model for security, folks. Let's always get that right.
Yep.
But when it comes to the infrastructure, it's on us.
Right. Anything from you, Kirk?
Just echo exactly what Mark said there. I think give it a go. And also, one thing we didn't mention is obviously one of the other advantages is it's the native integrations it has with the upstream services as well. So I believe you look at EKS as one of them there. That can automatically take advantage of it as well, give you more performance, lower latency, those sort of things. So just give it a go. Great technical resources. I have to pat the AWS folks on the back. They've excelled at the technical documentation and all of the blogs around it. So yeah, absolutely. There's tons of detail. And if you need to reach out and get some more, then myself and Mark can certainly help.
Great. And how long were you stuck outside your house for, Kirk, in the final analysis?
2 days.
Yeah. No, this is a fake background. I'm still outside.
He's still out there now. He brought the green screen out.
Right. So thanks for joining us on the feed. Hopefully we'll see you in person when we finally get to do that. Maybe we'll run into reInvent if any of us actually make it out to reInvent with the travel restrictions and everything else. I do have a ticket, but we'll see what happens with the all this stuff that's going on. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again.
See you in 75 days.
Cheers. There we go. So have a look at Amazon FXN is what we're going to call it, right? Great. So I think we probably closed the raffle already. So you can't go and re-enter that, but we will be announcing the results of that later on. For now, we're going to go over to our final speaker of the day, which is Dennis Barton, who is a Java software engineer with 15 years of experience. He's currently freelancing, and I believe this is Dennis's first time speaking at an event. It's certainly his first time speaking at this kind of meetup. Maybe the first time he's submitted his talk by video. So we're going to learn now about creating a serverless architecture with Java and Quarkus. Over to you, Dennis.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending my talk today. I'm Dennis and I will be giving you a presentation about creating a serverless architecture using Java and Quarkus. I'll quickly go over the content of my talk. First, a small introduction of myself, my company, and the product. Then I'll showcase you the application that I developed, and for which I'm going to show you how the architecture looks like and which AWS serverless components are used. Afterwards, it's time for a more technical demo, where I'll be showing you the difference between a Lambda function written in Java and one compiled as a native image by using the Quarkus framework. And to end with, I'll briefly inform you what's still upcoming and what the future of the application can bring. So, like I mentioned, I'm Dennis Barton. I'm a Java developer for about 15 years now and living in Belgium. I'm the owner of Innovative Solutions. This is a private company held for my freelance activities and it was launched in 2013. Since working as a freelancer, most of the times you do a project where you get paid by the hour and you're kind of limited to the amount of hours you can work in a day, so I was looking for a longer time already to launch a product for myself. So in 2020 I launched Productive, which is a digital showroom assistant. For this, I'm the software engineer, I'm the sales manager, doing the marketing and so on, basically trying to do everything myself. So let's kick off with the application we're going to use as a reference during this presentation. I'll first quickly guide you through the features of the application in order to get some context when we go over the architecture. The first and most important part is the mobile application, which is this digital showroom assistant. The app is used by the salesperson who is guiding you through the store and trying to sell products. The idea behind the app is that it's a complete catalog of what is in store, but also what can be ordered. Another aspect of the app is the visualizer. The first type of clients we are targeting are the ones that are selling tiles or floors. So the visualizer can replace the floor based on a single tile and some predefined scenes. This allows you to show different colors next to each other into all different kinds of interiors, so that the customer get a better view and understanding of what he wants to purchase. Then I'll quickly go over the features that are available in the dashboard and the management application that you will see later in the architectural diagram. It all starts with the dashboard where you get some in-store analytics. This tells the store owner which types of products or which products are viewed a lot. In case of stores where we have multiple salespersons, we can also view how well they perform and how many appointments are actually converted into an order. Time for some technical details in the architecture. So first I want to explain what is serverless and why go for that approach. Well, the definition is added on the slide and it's coming from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The short answer is that the developer, the person who deals with the business logic, does not need to be concerned with the server. The service provider handles it. In this case, it's AWS. So why did I choose for this service approach? Well, basically because I didn't want to manage an EC2 instance myself or deploy the application as a container on a Kubernetes cluster. I would need to keep them up to date and apply security patches and so on. I just wanted to focus on the real implementation of the application, so just my code and some YAML files, of course, to set up the components. Next to the simplicity of serverless, you also have the main benefit that you only pay for what you use, which makes it even a more better candidate than starting something new. It's of course not always the case. If you, for example, have an application that would always get the same amount of load or throughput, you might be better off with an application that's always running. The following diagram shows the complete architecture of how the application is set up right now. So for the front-end applications, the entry point is CloudFront, which is a CDN in front of S3, which serves the assets, and JavaScript for the applications. Those are built with React. Next to that, there is an API gateway in front of the Lambda functions, which routes a request back to the serverless implementation, which in this case is a certain Lambda function. For authentication, we're making use of Amazon Cognito. This one is linked to certain parts of the API gateway. By linking it like this to the API gateway directly, we don't need to add any authentication logic anymore inside our application. Our business logic is split per domain, and the Lambda functions are also set up like that. If there is need for a Lambda function to save or persist other data, I've chosen to create an S3 bucket or a DynamoDB table per function. This separation makes it easier to create something new or even divest when something is not needed anymore. Of course, I also looked how easy it was to deploy, and then it makes more sense to create and deploy those resources together. And for your information, I'm using the serverless framework to deploy those via CircleCI. For the appointment parts, it's not only using a DynamoDB table for saving data. So I'll zoom in on this part. There's a DynamoDB table, but there's also a stream link to that table. Via this stream, we are capturing the changes made to an appointment, which is adding and removing products. That data is then processed asynchronously and is feeding our summary data, which is used on the management dashboard. For now, the summary DynamoDB table looks sufficient. Maybe in the future, I'll probably rewrite it to something more flexible like Elasticsearch. Our appointments Lambda function also puts messages on SQS queues when the status changes. On that SQS queue, we also have another Lambda function which is triggered by those events, and it will send out notifications to the customer via email. And for that, I'm using SES, which is the simple email service from AWS. So before we dive into the demo, let's go a bit more into detail of the Lambda functions that contain all the business logic. So what is a Lambda function? AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that runs your code in response to events and automatically manages compute resources for you. So if you remember the drawing from the previous slide, those events come from an API gateway, SQS, a stream, or different other kinds of events. The code behind a Lambda function can be in several programming languages, such as Python, Node.js, Java, Go, C#, and several others. I'm not going to discuss in this talk which programming language is the best for using in a Lambda function, but as a full-time Java developer, for me the option to use Java was obvious. This was one of the main drivers next to the fact that the product should be finished and launched as soon as possible. In theory, it looks all very promising to have AWS Lambda start their function whenever an event is triggered. But there are some side notes to be aware of. The lifecycle of a Lambda function consists out of an initialization part, invocation part, and a shutdown phase. Let's start with that initialization part first, where AWS will bootstrap their function. And these starts can either be a cold start or a warm start. A cold start occurs when AWS creates a new instance of a Lambda function to process events. This can be when a new version of something is deployed or when a Lambda function is inactive for a longer time. The cold start is most easily observed by an increased latency to process an event in comparison to a warm invocation of a Lambda function. If you have an application used in production by a lot of customers and your load is quite equal, most of the time you won't even suffer too much from those cold starts. However, when you launch a new application with only a handful of customers, the cold start is a problem, or at least annoying. Definitely if you have a Lambda function per domain which results in multiple cold starts when the user browses through the application. So for the ones that are also doing development or using Java, you are probably aware when writing a Java application, it first starts up the JVM which actually runs our code. The startup of that JVM is what's causing the cold start of the Lambda function to be slow. There is now a solution to this problem of the JVM which needs to start, being a native image created by guardrail, which actually converts your application into a native image. At this moment, there are several Java frameworks out there that support you with this. We have Micronaut, Spring Cloud Function, and Quarkus. This one is the framework of my choice. Quarkus, in contrast to the other frameworks, is engineered to boot up quickly and uses less memory. It is therefore well suited to use with Java, with Lambda. Even more important is the fact that it is designed to work seamlessly with GraalVM so that if desired, you can build your app as a native executable, but also in JVM mode. So how does Quarkus do this? It tries to do as much during build or compile time instead of at runtime. There is a challenge, however, when trying to run your Java application as a native binary. You cannot use all libraries and tools you want. There is stuff like reflection, method handles, and so on. But because GraalVM tries to do a lot of optimizations, such as removing dead code, it will analyze your application, and if you don't use a field method constructor, it will remove it. That's why reflection does not work out of the box. There is of course a way to support for this, but it's up to you as a developer then to make some configuration changes or annotate some classes. I'll come back on this during the demo. So to start the demo, I'll go to code.quarkus.io, which is your starting place when creating a new application with Quarkus, and where you can select which frameworks you want to use in combination with Lambda. So let's search for AWS, and it will select AWS Lambda and DynamoDB, and we generate our application. This results in the following project. So here I cheated a little bit and already prepped some code. So I made one Lambda function, I'll go over it, and it implements a request handler. And for the sake of this demo, I'll just use an API gateway event. So there is a get, which will retrieve all registrations, and a post to save registrations. And if you do something else, it will throw an error. I'll go first to saving a registration. So what I get, I'll parse the body from the request with JSON to a registration. Then I'll use a DynamoDB client, and I'll save it into a table, and then the response will be a 200 with nothing in the body. And for a get, we'll have the same. We have the retrieve all registrations. It will do a scan of the complete table, convert our DynamoDB items into a registration, and I'll respond that as JSON. Now, the main model is pretty easy. It looks like this. It's just an event and a name. And that's basically it for the code part. And if you generate the code, it will give you some YAML files to use SAM local, but for this demo I will use serverless as well, since I'm used to that for my application. And to compare JVM mode and native mode, I made two separate serverless files. I'll quickly go over them. So the service name, I will use the domain manager, which is used to expose the Lambda function behind an API gateway. My package, so Quarkus will generate the zip file for me called function zip. I prepared one for JVM mode and one in native mode. And then you can see here, which is the handler that will execute your code. So in JVM mode, the Quarkus tree handler, which will find the class needs to perform the request. And you see it's running in Java 11. Then if we go into native mode, it all looks the same, except that there are handler, it doesn't even matter. So I just take handler, and the runtime is provided, because in the native image, it doesn't matter. There's no runtime. It's all baked into the binary image. So what I first do is create an Uber jar. So that's basically a fat jar that contains the code and all the libraries needed to run. It will take about 20 seconds or so to build this zip file. And that's the one I'm going to deploy to AWS. It's just my account. And then we'll execute the curl, and then you can see the cold start and warm start. So I have some curl commands ready here to execute. Just take a simple one where I'll fetch all the data. I'll first deploy it. So right now, normally you just have one serverless file, but I made a different one for JVM mode and Lambda. And native mode. I'll deploy this one. And that's the great thing about serverless. It can create all kinds of resources for you, and just with one deploy command. And that's why I combined DynamoDB and the Lambda function and the API gateway all together. There we go. So now it's deployed. So I'll do a curl and I'll print the time to this. And right now the Lambda's starting up and querying DynamoDB, and as you can see, to return those 3 events, it took 6 seconds, which is really slow. So I'll do the request again, then you can see it takes 3 milliseconds, so this is a warm start. So I'm going to create a native image now for this Lambda function. So I'm using this guardrail command, where you can see that the package type is native, and I'm saying use a container build. So what it will do is use a Docker container to actually build this Lambda function as a native binary. I already executed this command, so this one. And there you can see that it takes quite a long time to generate a simple Lambda function. So in this case, it took about 4 minutes. There are a lot of reasons. That's because of the code optimization that RVM is trying to do, and trying to see which code is really necessary. So it will try to search all the access paths and remove the code that's not necessary. So this one I'll deploy now as well. What I'm going to do now is also deploy this one. And I'm using my serverless native YAML file. And then in the meantime, grab my curl command, and I'll do the same like before, and just fetch all the registrations for a specific event. And then you can see how long it takes with a native image in cold start and a warm start. So deploying it right now. There we go. So the native image is deployed now. I'll execute the same curl command. Okay, voila. There you can see it's showing cold start. Instead of the 6 seconds like before, it's now only 700 milliseconds. A warm start, even less. So we gain a lot of performance by using the native node in combination with GraalVM, which is supported by Quarkus. That's it for the demo part. So to wrap up, since we only recently launched the application last year in the middle of the pandemic where stores were closed, the main focus now lies on getting our product adopted into the market by some more stores. There are still lots of technical possibilities left in the retail space which can be added to the product, such as augmented reality, planning of appointments, better customer follow-up, and other automation features. Thanks for watching my presentation, and hopefully you will also give it a try to combine Java with the Quarkus framework when you're creating new Lambda functions.
Right, and so I'm also joined on the feed, of course, by Dennis. Where are you joining us from, Dennis, today?
Hi, John. I'm from Belgium, so literally a small city in Belgium.
Gotcha. Belgium is one of the places that I miss visiting as a result of the pandemic. There were a lot of DevOps and infrastructure as code and other related things going on there through the year, and I used to take the opportunity to go and visit Ghent and visit Bruges and hang out with the beers and the fries over there. It's a shame not to be able to be there at the moment.
All the good things.
Absolutely. So. Quarkus, tell me, is this specifically what Quarkus is for, or does it do something else normally and you've repurposed it? What's the story behind it as a framework?
Oh, it's focused on the native image thing, but there are a lot of other things in it. So they're also focusing on running your applications on Kubernetes with as less resources as possible and so on. So it's more or less like a competitor to Spring, but it's also compatible with it.
Gotcha. So anywhere that I might be running a Java workload in a container or as a Lambda, it's probably useful for that.
Correct. You can use Quarkus for that.
Gotcha.
Use all the benefits with other frameworks.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's rather new. It's officially from Red Hat, and it's even supported right now. So.
Right. Gotcha. The compile time of the Quarkus version of your Lambda was pretty high, right? It was sort of 4 minutes or so. Is that because it's also compiling the dependent libraries and all of the other things that you like the Lambda libraries and the DynamoDB libraries and those things?
Yeah, well, it does. It will try to figure out everything that it needs for running, and that's why it's taking so long. So I think it's trying to follow the execution part of your application and strip out all those things. It really takes a long time. It's one of the downsides of it. So that you only have to do it before deploying it.
Yeah, and does it have the ability to cache some of that for subsequent compiles, or is that the cycle time for everything?
No, not yet. It has been requested a few times in the Zulit chat as well, so where all the Quarkus developers are, and it has come to mind a few times already, but it's not in there yet.
Right. Yeah, it seems like, I guess if you're developing your code for sort of functionality, maybe you don't use that, and then you kind of use the Quarkus approach in the final compile before you push out into production.
Yeah, correct. That's why I have the two serverless files. So I can run it in JVM mode, and then it takes only a couple of seconds to build it. Then I can test it locally and also deploy that version before we go to a test environment or production. I make the native image.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there are some things that it's unable to work with, so things like reflection and so forth. Does that mean that there are some types of software, maybe some libraries that you'd use that will never work, or is it the case that you can make anything work? It just might take a bit more effort to tune something that is using reflection in more detail.
Yeah. So what the Quarkus will try to do, they are creating some extensions, which is their version of the library. And then they work around those things that don't work. There are some libraries that are not suitable for doing that. And reflection is one of those things, but you can work around. And I think it's in the codes. You can register one of the classes. So to say, I'm using reflection for this, and then when creating native image, it will take that into account. So there are workarounds for it, but not everything will work.
So if
that's the downside. It's rather new, all this stuff.
Right, so you might find that you bring in a library and it's all working in your test environment, but actually it's not going to work in production, and you can't convince it to either, which I guess would mean then that you have a slow lambda for that particular bit of functionality.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Are there any other sort of limitations to I guess the reflection is one of them. Are there any other sort of key Java things that people would recognize where you say, actually, Quarkus doesn't work with that?
I think that's the most, reflection is the one that's used most. So what you do is you take in your body, you parse it with JSON and whatever. So I think that's most of the times the error you stumble upon is the reflection part. There are some other technical things, but I didn't come across those.
Yeah, gotcha. Let's talk a bit more sort of generally about your AWS landscape. I think you said you were using the serverless framework for deployment. Was that right?
Yeah.
How do you find that to use? Did you try some of the alternatives? What led you to choose serverless as a thing to use for that deployment?
Yeah, I was already using serverless for one of the clients where I'm doing a project for, and I found it really easy to just take all the resources you need. Behind the scenes, it's using CloudFormation, so it all works together. So if you see my serverless files for the SIA appointment, for example, it contains a DynamoDB, it contains SQS, and it all just do LS deploy, and it's all working. It's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Good. And what's the what are the things that AWS doesn't do for you that you'd like it to do? Like what's on your shopping list for reInvent later on in the year? What are you hoping to see?
That's a tough. For the moment, I'm using the basic functionalities, and yeah, I get there. So nothing really that I'm waiting for at this moment. No.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned you're using Cognito. Is that right?
Yeah.
I remember earlier on in the feed I was complaining about Cognito. Have you come across any limitations with that service that you've bumped up against in your development?
Not really. I'm using it really basic. So the user management and so on, it's not integrated that much into the application. It's only in there for the authentication part. So no integration with other things like Active Directory or so on. So it's really basic, but yeah, it works and it keeps the authentication logic out of my application.
Sorry, excuse me. Been a long day. And what are the next steps for the application that you're building? Where are you planning on taking this?
Yeah, I mentioned, so I was mainly focusing on the technical parts of the application, and I should focus on the other stuff as well. So first sales and trying to get more customers for the application. If that's the case, then I would like to focus on what the data I'm collecting. I think I can do a lot more with that. So instead of just capturing all the data, I think there's more into getting upfront what the customer will need or what other products are of interest for the end consumer.
Mm-hmm. So very sort of early days in startup land for you in that product.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's exciting times at that stage in a business. I think where you're figuring out what works and what you can where you're going to go next. It's a fun time.
This moment's just an MVP phase. I have one customer already, and I'm trying to search for people who are going to help me with the sales and the marketing stuff.
Gotcha. Good. And was I right in saying this is the first talk you've given at an event or a meetup?
Yeah, indeed. I'm trying to do some talks at a customer, for example, but that's only for a small audience. And you know the people. It's also a difference.
Yeah, pretty nerve-wracking, but good to flex those muscles. I think for me, public speaking was a fundamental part to building my career, I think. So it's good to see you taking a step on that journey, and good to see you doing that with us.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Congratulations. So thanks for joining us, Dennis. Been good to chat with you. Thanks for sharing your experience of Quarkus, and I'll let you post in the stream chat if your contact details if people want to follow up and maybe help you with the sales and marketing of your application.
Nice.
Great. Thanks very much. Dennis there, all the way from Belgium. I do miss Belgium. There's a very specific pub that I'm thinking of that those of you who've also been to config management camp will probably remember wistfully. Anyway, enough pining for the days of travel being possible. Let's get ourselves wrapped up. So. First of all, big thank you to our speakers this evening. It's Mark Nunnikoven from Lacework, Dennis Barton, who you have literally just seen. We also had Mark and Kirk, respectively, from AWS and from NetApp, talking about the new FSXN, whose full name I'm not going to provide. We had, of course, a raffle running earlier. We can go and look at the raffle winners this evening. Today, the Echo. The Amazon Echo is going to go to Leslie Lee, and the 2 Echo Dots to Fong Vu and Moti Pangyanan. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but it is, it's after 8:15 of an evening. I'm not going to try that again. Thank you for entering. You will be contacted for your address details to get those sent out to you. Well done. Congratulations. You too can... I guess turn your lights on and off, which is more or less what I do with my, my Echo for the most part. And finally, to wrap up, a big thanks to our sponsors, Deloitte, Esynergy, and Sainsbury's Tech for their support this time and actually for the rest of this year as well. We'd also like to remind you to... forgotten some thanks. This is weird. This isn't showing up like this on my other laptop. Thanks to my co-organisers. That's Paul, Nat, Jonas, Yoyu, and Ijaz for helping put this together. I mostly just do the video stuff and the standing in front of the camera talking. These guys are putting a lot more effort in behind the scenes between the events. And we'd like to remind you that the next meetup is going to be the 17th of November. That's again going to be online. We don't yet have our speaker lineup for that, but we will let you know that in due course. We will also hopefully have some AMAs between now and then. I believe Mark, who spoke earlier on security, is going to do an AMA for us. So watch this space for more details about that. And if there's anybody else you would like to see doing an AMA with us, then do let us know, and we'll reach out to them and see whether we can make that happen. Also, don't forget that the AWS Com Summit is happening on, I think it was the 6th and the 7th of October. That's at the Excel Centre in London, alongside the Digital Transformation Expo, where apparently Louis Theroux is talking about digital transformation. I've got to be seen to be believed. I'll probably be there on the 7th. I'm away for the rest of that week. And please do remember to fill out our attendee survey, either by following the QR code there or following the link that Paul has pasted into the stream chat. The attendee survey is the way that we find out whether we've done a good job for you this evening. Let us know what we can make better for you in subsequent events. Do also fill out the diversity and inclusion survey that we linked to earlier on, which is how we're going to find out what you are as an audience, I guess, how you made up as an audience, and also consider things like accessibility for you if you are hard of hearing or you need specific physical access things taken care of so that you can attend our meetups. Then we'd like to see you fill out that form so that we can come back and make our events more inclusive for you when we are back in person, which I think is going to be spring at this point. We will let you know. So that is, I think, everything from me. It's great to host for you all as ever this evening. We will see you again in November. In the meantime, if you're an AWS Solutions Architect looking for work, please do let me know. We are hiring right now in the UK and in other parts of Europe. One last plug before we wrap up. Thanks very much. I've been John Topper, and I will see you again next time.